there, comic book friends. I'm Travis. It's time for the edition of No Capes, where I talk about comic books that don't have to do with superheroes. This is for a week of January 21st, 2015. Let's talk some comics. This is Dark Horse Presents, issue number 6. Part of the Dark Horse Presents, an anthology. Lots of times it just has its own little short stories that span over 2 or 3 of these copies to tell a full story, or it's an introduction to something that's going to end up going and being part of an ongoing or some other miniseries that Dark Horse is planning to put out later on. This cover is part of The Pastaways, which is going to be a new book coming out in March, I believe. So you get kind of an introductory as to what happens to start the premise for that story in it, which wasn't bad. I liked it more than I thought I was going to. That's a Matt Kindt story, which wasn't my concern. Was more concerned with Scott Collins' art. I'm not always a big fan of Scott Collins' art, and it was pretty decent. The part about this that really got me excited was the semi-auto magic. Chapter 3 is what's in here, and it's the story and lettering is by Alex DeCamp. But the part that I was excited about was the arts by Jerry Ordway, and I'm a really big Jerry Ordway fan. I always loved his Infinity Inc. I loved his All-Star Squadron and some of that type of stuff. And he just has a great art style. It has an oldness to it, but he keeps it current and modern in the same sense. I love his craftsmanship, the way he inks, the way he sets panels and pages, his faces, styles of things I really enjoy. He just does a traditional comic book woman's hair that I like. That sounds silly, but there's just something about it that I like. In this case, the main character reminds me of Wonder Woman in that sense, partially because she has dark hair, but just in the way that it flows and whatnot. So this is one of the pages. I just really like his style of art, his cross-hatching, his shading, his line work, all of that. It's kind of more of a traditional style. The weight of the page and the depth of the page is created with shadow and line work, as opposed to truly like a lot of modern art now, comic book art. A lot of that weight is put more on the colorist for depth of a color to give it shape and contour and texture, which is fine for what it is. But I really do kind of like this kind of old traditional style of doing comics too. I like both. I like both, and I'm happy to have both in the comic world. It seems like there's less of this though, and so I really enjoy that. And it was kind of an interesting story. Also, that story in particular, some sort of a magical world. It's like our world, except for magic is a much more predominant kind of a thing. And this main character, she is somebody who gets to use violent magic and kill with her magic. There's these magic guilds or some sort of magic society and rules and laws. She's a person that is allowed to do that. She's going down to Mexico because all these boys are becoming zombies when they play these video games. They play this video game, they become a zombie, like their soul is gone. Where's their soul at? And she's discovered where those souls are going, and also has herself in kind of a bad shape by the time that's done in it. There's Tiger Lung, The Guild, which is kind of an interesting thing by Simon Ray. Little short stories that are kind of a little more cartoony, but interesting also. It's they're like Eskimo or Inuit or that sort of Icelandic in nature seem to be kind of a thing. There's always some folklorish type thing to it. In this case, they're caribou hunting. He gets hit by a caribou. He thinks he gets thrown into the Great Lake, and he talks to some spirits in the Great Lake. A pike almost eats him, and some interesting stuff there. And really, the Great Lake is a giant spiritual journey, and so there's some pages of that that are really interesting. There's a piece of The Mighty in here. This is from 1985. This is a part 3, so I'm catching the end of the story. That's pretty interesting and pretty sinister. The Mighty is about this superhero kind of like a Superman of sorts. And he has some relatively sinister motivations by the time the whole thing gets done. And a creepy story at the end of this thing called Hot Shot, a murder storybook about a person who ODs on heroin and how that happened and whatnot. So interesting, lots of spread of stories in there. This is a $5 book. It's a kind of a fancier deluxe format. The covers are really thick and hard and shiny, and you know, I'm betting it's 40 pages. I'd have to actually look. I'd actually have to count to know for sure, but that's what I'm guessing it is, somewhere around there, 30 pages maybe. But you know, just little bits and pieces of other thing, like this wonderful Darrow picture there. So I enjoy it. I like anthology books. They're always interesting. You know, there's hit and miss stuff always within them. I don't know how long I'll stand. I used to collect Dark Horse Presents quite a while ago. Back then it was like a $7 or $8 book. They trimmed it down. It doesn't have a square binding anymore like it used to. So I think that's probably where they saved some of their production out to drop the price on this. But it's still kind of cool to kind of give you a glimpse of what's coming. You know, some stories that sit on their own and some glimpses of what's coming from Dark Horse that you might be interested in. So in my case, I'm not going in blind when I order 3 months in advance what the books are. So cool for that. Intersect issue number 3 continues to be just as crazy pants as always. You know, with some stuff that I just don't, you know, I mean, yeah, take it for what you want. I think the idea behind this, to a large degree, the artist creator, Ray Fox, who does the entire thing, is trying to go for something that's incredibly different, incredibly experimental, you know, on the edge of being something, you know, radically different. Not so much so, though, but in a lot of ways, yes. But I think he's pushed so hard. There's some cool art. That's the dog that's been chasing him this whole time. But he's pushing that envelope so hard in here that it might, I think it's failing. I'm hanging on. I'm hanging on because it feels to me like I don't want the book to beat me, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. I want to think that there's this really depthiness to it, and I'm not sure that there really actually generally is at the end of the day. I'm not sure, 100% sure it's really there. Why I haven't come completely frustrated with it yet, I'm not sure. Maybe because there's just enough weirdness about it that I do like. Because I do like weird, I do like unhinged, I do like stream of consciousness. It's where my brain tends to be at lots of times anyway. So going there, you know, so I want to embrace that. You know, I want to, you know, I want to embrace it. I want to experience it. Yeah, but it needs to be saying something at the end of the day, right? To be worth something other than to go, ooh, wow, to anybody besides the person who's creating it. And I don't know if this art is, ooh, wow. It's interesting, but the color palette, after a while, is starting to get boring if that's all I'm supposed to be is, ooh, wow. Now, if this was like J.H. Williams style typed art and was just stream of conscious craziness, I would really be enjoying it because of the rich colors and that sort of thing. Whereas this doesn't have rich colors. You know, it's all this kind of dull, you know, watercolor and pencil work. So it doesn't have this eye-poppingness to it, that we at least get that experience out of it. Certainly would not recommend this book to anybody in any way. There are bits and pieces that are coming together. The characters are somewhat interesting, what little bits we get of them. This whole metamorphosis that one character is going through where they keep changing back and forth from being a man and being a woman. I mean, half the time their hands are put on backwards because the man pops out of the back of the head of the woman's face and then kind of comes out from behind her and she fades away. And so different bits and pieces are in transition. All really weird stuff, but I don't know if very many people are still reading this. Yeah, it's something else, isn't it? If you're reading it. The Kitchen, issue number 3 of 8. Plot thickens. Things are starting to get more complicated. Simply trying to run the husband's business is maybe going to get out of control. Get some interesting aspects in here. A mob family from another part. It's like, hey, we like the way you're working. we need to have a meet. Maybe we can join forces. That can either be a good thing or a bad thing, because the family that they want to meet them is the family of the guy they basically kill off in the first issue of this. So they're unsure whether or not it's really a genuine offer, or they just want to get him close enough that they can really destroy them. Other aspect of this that's really interesting is the one of the women is liking the powers, liking the abilities, liking the ability to control and run this thing. And at one point, it's hinted that, hey, the lawyers said that more than likely the husbands are going to get out, and she implies that that's just one more person she's going to have to deal with. Like, she doesn't want the husband back; she wants the power. So that's all cool. One thing about this, it felt to me like that in this issue, Ming Doyle's art wasn't as strong as it has been in some of the others. I enjoyed Ming Doyle's artwork. The backgrounds were less so. There's a couple places where perspective seems a little strange. Depth of view, I don't understand. Some shots where we see like people's hips and a gun that's being drawn and pointed, and I'm not sure if the gun's like stabbed in their hip or if it's out in front of the hip. That depth perception seems to be gone in the picture, is one of the ones that really bothered me. There's a couple places that are kind of like that. So it almost feels like this issue maybe is a little more rushed than some of the other work, but still really enjoying it. If you like Sopranos type mob 1970s type story, this is a pretty cool story for that. Next, The Burning Fields, 1 of 8 by Boom Studio. This is written by Morsi, who is the same writer of things like Rocher Limit, which I'm enjoying Rocher Limit, so I thought I would get this too. So it's like, I kind of like the premise. The idea was that it's set in the here and now. Of course, corporations are in Iraq now that the Iraq War is basically over with, and corporations are running the oil fields. They have their own private security firms and that sort of thing. You know, there is some military presence still in the place, but suddenly there is what seems to be potentially a serial killer roaming across these oil fields, butchering people. And one of our main characters is a woman who used to work for the military, currently in Chicago, working for the police department, struggling there within the police department. Seems to be some personnel type issues and some struggles. And she's hired by one of these private firms by a guy who used to be in the military along with her to come back to Iraq to do this investigation because she's the right person. She used to be an investigator in the military. Clearly she has some history with the military that did not bode well, that did not end well in this area, but she decides to go back anyway because things have gotten too bad for her in Chicago in a violent way. So she's off to Iraq. In Iraq, there's this horrible murdering going on in it and whatnot. And a lot of people aren't a fan of the art. I thought it was okay. The dialogue, a little stiff in places maybe. I'm still actually kind of intrigued. It's definitely bloody, it's gory, it's violent. I mean, in one of the first pages, they pull out a man's tongue and splack it on the ground. But really, it's the brutal slaying at the very end, this ritual killing and marking that is what ends the issue, that makes it interesting. This has been going on for some time. Another character that's kind of shown up in it, that in this, is a Iraqi detective too, that is trying to walk this thin line between trying to keep his country, his city, from slipping into utter chaos. Trying to have some level of control, knowing full well that it feels like they can't push the corporations and the military out, but at the same time not letting those people walk all over the Iraqis and the Iraqi people, to be able to be prideful and those sorts of things too. So there's a lot of interesting stuff that could be told in the story. I'm going to keep reading it for now. Is it amazing? No. There's some curious elements about it that I'm interested to see them explore. This issue felt like a lot of setup to get us there. So I'm hoping the next issue will start showing us the extra special stuff, besides just the gore, to see what cool thing might happen. Rumble, issue number 2. I'm really enjoying this book. It's all about the art and the crazy things that are happening in it. There's a little more setup in here Feels like there might be a little more plot, but it certainly has the same problems with it that the issue 1 had, in that it feels like we're not getting enough information. Not that we need all the answers given to us, but where are they at? What time is this? Is there something besides these mythical people coming out of the woodwork? Is that a normal thing? Is that a new thing? Is that something that's just always been there and we don't know about? There's certain elements that make you question and leave you lingering in potentially an uncomfortable way as a reader. Like the first issue of the wonderful opening scenes with like the Paul Bunyan land, where the Paul Bunyan's laying sideways and broken. Is it just because the economy's bad, or does that mean something else? Are these places that are abandoned or whatever? We don't know. But in this, there's this crazy cat that we saw in the first issue that I mentioned then. I don't know what this cat's about. What's the point of that? Why are they showing us that? Well, now that cat is kind of going bonkers, in that the cat eats everything in the refrigerator, and so now the cat is getting giant. The cat gets bigger throughout the book. We have this like 7-headed, Komodo dragon lizard thing that this guy that lives in the city takes out to a vacant parking lot and is playing ball with, which is pretty crazy. Our main character here, well, one of the main characters, chops up these gargoyles, which is pretty exciting. He seems to be engaged with these other deity lizard frog man that shows up with his alligators from the sewer to present some sort of a challenge to our scarecrow figure here. I say scarecrow because I know that from reading solicitation type stuff. Plus in this issue, it shows a little bit of straw poking out from under his glove that does catch on fire at one point, which was a little bit interesting. But the art in it is amazing. The art is so dynamic. The colors are incredible by Dave Stewart. I'm on it for the art more than anything, and I'm just going to ride it along for the experience of seeing where this might take us, because it just looks a little crazy as we get more information about the excitement of what's going on here. So I've been digging it for the art and just the kind of weird story. Yes, to some degree it's nonsensical. Yes, to some degree, like I said, there are these uncomfortable holes of information. It would be nice to know, so we had like a scaffolding to hang this thing on. But I'm okay. I'm enjoying it. It's pretty to look at, and the parts that are there are interesting. And finally, this time, BPRD issue number 127. We get the aftermath in this issue of what happens when they engage this giant monster. We see some of... sorry, I'm losing my voice. We see some of Howard's past yet again, where he had... dang it, and no peanut. Right. One sneezing and coughing fit later. At any rate, we get to see Howard back in the past dealing with the same sort of a monster, how he engaged it and stuff there, and we get to see kind of what he did to kind of get away from the monster, rescue the one guy he rescued, and that sort of thing. I do like how they travel into the, well, they show us the past. Howard's in this abandoned home, and it looks like a home where some kids had drawn on the wall with chalk or whatever. They look kind of like quasi-cave painting. He puts his hand on that, and that, of course, brings it back to his kind of prehistoric time that he part of his psyche comes from, which was really interesting, and I enjoyed that. This is yet another James Hearn, same guy who's doing the art on Rumble. This is another issue from him. That artwork is still great. Dave Stewart on colors here, clearly colored a different style than what Rumble was. Still awesome. And the very end of this is really interesting in the fact that Howard finds one of these magical rocks, the shaman from back in these prehistoric times, a shaman was going to give him, but were lost in the water. He ends up finding one of those in this frozen lake, which is pretty awesome. Anyway, I'm really enjoying it. I know it can be a bit complicated and daunting to jump into as a new reader. I still think you can embrace what's there and enjoy that, and the pieces will fill themselves in. The wonderful thing about this book is it does mine lots of old stuff and new stuff. So all the elements that are introduced at some point will show back up again at some other place. I think that makes for a much richer and bigger universe, and I really enjoy that. And I'm going to go now because I need to cough some more and blow my nose, and I will see you all on another video. Have a great one, everybody.